My name is Salvatore Alaimo, A-L-A-I-M-O. I'm an associate professor in the School of Public, Nonprofit, and Health Administration at Grand Valley State University. So I'm here today to talk about some recent research that was published in the second edition, Handbook for Research on Nonprofit Economics and Management, Edward Elgar Publishing. My chapter is entitled Contracting Out. Now that might not be what you think it is. A lot of literature from wonderful scholars like Seidel, Smith, Van Slyke has covered government contracting out to nonprofits. My topic is a little bit different. It concerns nonprofits contracting out for services. So my study looked at fiscal year 2013. I had an IRS data set of about 23,000 organizations, all of which contracted for services for $100,000 or more. Now that's a total of $135 billion. The lower bound estimate, because we don't have complete information, is $154 billion. The upper bound estimate is $1.9 trillion. A more accurate estimate of total contracted dollars for 501c3 nonprofits would be more around $1 trillion, considering we don't have information from the IRS on all the contractors compensated for less than $100,000. So this comes from Section 7, Part B of the IRS 990 form, in case you're interested in looking that up. And again, that section is entitled Independent Contractors. So why do nonprofits contract out for services? There are many reasons why nonprofits would contract out for services that are going to vary across types of C3 nonprofits based on subsector size and so on. But there's some reasons that can kind of cut across all categories. One would be the issue of core functions. What is it that the nonprofit does, performs, services provided that are more in line with their mission? What are the services that are not in line with their mission? And what of those services should be contracted out? Economies of scale would be another reason. Bounded rationality, the limitations that the organization has in terms of skills, knowledge, technology, aptitude. And other reasons might include specialization. There might simply be functions or skills that the nonprofit does not have in-house, so it's going to contract out for those services. So here we see the financial information for the sample, indicating that these organizations are large. 52% of the sample had revenue of over $10 million. And that's logical. These are the organizations that are compensating contractors for $100,000 or more. So we would expect these organizations to be large. Here we see the comparison of the sample to the population by subsector. The health subsector's predominant activity in contracting is evident here. This information covers the number of contractors in the sample as well as the upper and lower bound estimates for total contracted dollars. Here we see the relationship between the total revenue and total expenses to the total dollars contracted out using the Pearson two-tailed correlation. Once again, here we can see the dominant presence of the health subsector in contracting out. This slide shows the top 20 most frequently contracted out services by the number of contractors. So some conclusions from this study. Size matters. The larger the organization, the more likely they are to spend money contracting out for services. Specialization plays a role in twofold. Number one, for those highly specialized skills that are not in-house, such as legal services, construction, auditing, but also services that are specialized to what the core services of the nonprofit would be. So for example, an animal shelter is most likely to contract out for veterinary services. So we can see from this study the diversity of the world of C3 nonprofits in the United States is reflected in the diversity of the services that are contracted out for. Some services will cut across all types of C3s, things like architecture, legal services, construction, but some services are going to be specialized and more akin to the specific service delivery of that nonprofit. Another conclusion, once again, referring to the dominance of the health subsector, we see that they contract out for services more than any other subsector. The services they contract out for more cost more than any others on the list. And this is largely due to the model of hospitals. You know, hospitals at this point, for the most part, are buildings where almost everything inside that hospital is contracted out for, going from radiology to anesthesia to the physician groups, to other aspects of healthcare. There are ethical implications for this activity. Is there conflict of interest? We know sometimes nonprofits contract out to companies that are owned by board members. Other ethical implications might be excessive contracting out. Similar to government being the hollow state, at what point does a nonprofit become a hollow nonprofit? Another ethical implication is there congruency between the values of the nonprofit and the values of the contractor that they're engaging for the services? Management implications. Contract management is a profession. There's a national association, there's a journal, and there is an ethical code of standards. So it raises the question, where does contract management fit in the overall skill set that we would hope nonprofit leaders and managers have? This also raises question for us in academia teaching these programs, should we add a course in contract management to our curriculum? So this is something to consider. I'd now like to talk about some of the limitations of the study. Clearly there's a limitation embedded within what the IRS is asking for. When I wrote this chapter for the first edition of the handbook, I believe going back to around 2009, 2010, the IRS requirement for reporting independent contracted dollars, the threshold was $50,000. They have since doubled that, which further constricts the data upward to a minority representation of nonprofits and gives us less information about contracting activity. So that's an unfortunate limitation. The other limitation resides in the fact of something I said earlier. We simply don't have the information on all of the contracted services for which the contractors were compensated for less than $100,000. And we can assume that by the fact that the majority of nonprofits are small, there are many contracts out there less than $100,000 for which we simply don't have that data. We would need to do an additional primary research study to get that data to complement what the IRS is providing. Also, it's a snapshot in time. To properly track contracting activity, we would need to do this each year, maybe develop a panel study and see what the trends are over time for nonprofits engaging in these contracted services. Another limitation of this study is that it's quantitative only in nature. Ideally, we would have a qualitative study to complement the quantitative data from the IRS. This could be semi-structured interviews with those within the nonprofits that contract out for the services, or it could be case studies. But to get some qualitative data to better understand this activity beyond the numbers, find out the motivations. Why do nonprofits decide to contract out for these services? Why do they pick certain services over others? How do they vet their contractors? Do they evaluate the performance of their contractors? What do these processes look like, assuming that they do exist within those organizations? So hopefully in the future, a qualitative study can be performed to complement this data and give us a broader and more complete picture of this world of nonprofits contracting out for services. So this concludes what is really a short summary of the research that I've conducted on nonprofits contracting out for services. The book chapter is published. However, it is my desire to attract more of you, more scholars, more researchers, more students studying this topic. So I'm putting out the call here for those of you interested in this topic to contact me. And here is my contact information. Let me know if you're interested. I'm looking for people to join me in this research agenda, so as we move forward, we can uncover more information about the world of nonprofits contracting out for these services. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.